Sutta number 26, Cakkavatti Sihanada Sutta. The lions roar on the turning of the wheel. Chakka is the wheel. Thus have I heard. Once the Lord was staying among the Magadhans at Mathula. Then he said, Monks, Lord, they replied. And the Lord said, Monks, be islands unto yourselves, or be a lamb unto yourself. Be a refuge unto yourselves, with no other refuge. Let the Dhamma be your island or your lamb. Let the Dhamma be your refuge, with no other refuge. And how does a monk dwell as an island unto himself, as a refuge unto himself, with no other refuge, with the Dhamma as his island, with the Dhamma as his refuge, with no other refuge. Here a monk abides contemplating body in the body, ardent, clearly aware and mindful, having put away hankering and fretting for the world. He abides contemplating feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside hankering and fretting for the world. Keep to your own preserves, monks, to your ancestral haunts. If you do so, then Mara will find no lodgment, no foothold. It is just by the building up of wholesome states that this merit increases. Stop here for a moment. Now that I come to here, I just remembered I forgot to comment that the Buddha said, let me see, this last part of the previous sutta, under paragraph 23, on page 394, the Buddha said, Nigrodha, I do not speak for any of these reasons, but there are Nigrodha, unwholesome states that have not been abandoned, tainted, conducive to rebirth, fearful, productive of painful results in the future, associated with birth, decay and death. It is for the abandonment of these things that I teach the Dhamma. If you practice accordingly, these tainted things will be abandoned, and the things that make for purification will develop and grow. And you will all attain to and dwell in this very life by your own insight and realization in the fullness of perfected wisdom. So the Buddha is saying, as long as we have not become an arahant, we have, all of us, have unwholesome states in us. It is these unwholesome states that drag us down to rebirth and to the woeful plains of rebirth. So we practice the Dhamma to get rid of these unwholesome states. A lot of people come into the Dhamma, always think of trying to get jhana, trying to get jnana and all these things. They forget that actually you have to abandon all these unwholesome states before you can get. It's just like your hands is full with a lot of rubbish. Somebody wants to give you something better. Unless you throw away the rubbish, how can you have free hand to take something better? So we have to get rid of all these unwholesome states, and we have to always examine ourselves, and also to rely on the sutta, the Buddha's words. Just like in this Sutta 26, the Buddha said, be a lamb unto yourselves, be a refuge unto yourselves with no other refuge. Let the Dhamma be your lamb, let the Dhamma be your refuge with no other refuge. So we have to depend ourselves to make the effort, but to depend on the Buddha's words to be our guide. We need a guide, and the best guide is the Buddha. Instead of looking for some sayadaw or some achan or some hamdru or some sifu, so the best teacher is with us. That is the Buddha. And now that the Buddha has entered Nibbana, his words in the suttas, in the 5 Nikayas, is our refuge, our real refuge. So we take the Buddha's words as our guide and we strive. So one half of the practice is to get rid of unwholesome states. The other half is to, but only after we get rid of the unwholesome states that we can achieve the jhanas and the So the Buddha's words are the theory, and then meditation and getting rid of unwholesome states. The charana part, it's all there. So the Buddha says, keep to your own preserves, keep to your ancestral haunts. What he means is that we should keep to the four objects of sati or satipatthana. We should put our attention on these four objects instead of Mara's playground. Mara's playground is the world of the sights, sounds, smells, taste and touch, and also the mind. But worldly people, we want to indulge in all these worldly pleasures. That is Mara's bait. Just as a fisherman, he wants to catch the fish. He puts a nice bait there for the fish to eat. And the greedy fish will gulp it, not knowing there's a hook inside. So in the same way, the sensual pleasures in the world, they have a hook in there. Once we swallow the sensual pleasures, later we have to pay with tears. Once monks, there was a wheel-turning monarch named Dalhanemi, a righteous monarch of the law, maybe the Dhamma, conqueror of the four quarters, who had established the security of his realm and was possessed of the 7 treasures. These are the wheel treasure, elephant treasure, horse treasure, jewel treasure, woman treasure, householder treasure, and a 7th, the counselor treasure. He has more than 1,000 sons who are heroes of heroic stature, conquerors of the hostile army. He dwells, having conquered this sea-girt land without stick or sword, by the law or Dhamma, etc., as in Sutta 3, verse 1.5. And after many hundreds and thousands of years, King Dalhanemi said to a certain man, "My good man, whenever you see that the sacred wheel treasure has slipped from its position, report it to me." "Yes, sire," the man replied. And after many hundreds and thousands of years, the man saw that the sacred wheel treasure had slipped from its position. Seeing this, he reported the fact to the king. Then King Dalhanemi sent for his eldest son, the crown prince, and said, "My son, the sacred wheel treasure has slipped from its position. And I have heard say that when this happens to a wheel-turning monarch, he has not much longer to live. I have had my fill of human pleasures. Now is the time to seek heavenly pleasures. You, my son, take over control of this ocean-bounded land. I will shave off my hair and beard, don yellow robes, and go forth from the household life into homelessness." And having installed his eldest son in due form as king, King Dalhanemi shaved off his hair and beard, donned yellow robes, and went forth from the household life into homelessness. And 7 days after the royal sage had gone forth, the sacred wheel treasure vanished. Then a certain man came to the anointed Katya king and said, "Sire, you should know that the sacred wheel treasure has disappeared." At this the king was grieved and felt sad. He went to the royal sage and told him the news. And the royal sage said to him, "My son, you should not grieve or feel sad at the disappearance of the wheel treasure. The wheel treasure is not an heirloom from your fathers. But now, my son, you must turn yourself into an Aryan wheel turner. And then it may come about that if you perform the duties of an Aryan wheel turning monarch, on the fast day of the 15th, when you have washed your head and gone up to the veranda on top of your palace for the fast day, the sacred wheel treasure will appear to you, 1,000-spoked, complete with fellow hub and all appurtenances." And he asked, "But what, sire, is the duty of an Aryan wheel-turning monarch?" And the royal sage or chaplain said, "It is this, my son, yourself depending on the Dhamma, honoring it, revering it, cherishing it, doing homage to it and venerating it, having the Dhamma as your badge and banner, acknowledging the Dhamma as your master. You should establish guard, ward and protection according to Dhamma for your household, your troops, your nobles and vassals, for Brahmins and householders, town and country folk, ascetics and Brahmins, for beasts and birds. Let no crime prevail in your kingdom, and to those who are in need, give property. And whatever ascetics and Brahmins in your kingdom have renounced the life of sensual infatuation and are devoted to forbearance and gentleness, each one taming himself, each one calming himself, each one striving for the end of craving. From time to time we should go to them and consult them as to what is wholesome and what is unwholesome, that what is blameworthy and what is blameless, what is to be followed and what is not to be followed, and what action will in the long run lead to harm and sorrow, and what to welfare and happiness. Having listened to them, you should avoid evil and do what is good. That, my son, is the duty of an Aryan wheel-turning monarch. Stop here for a moment. This part also quite interesting. He's telling this new king that he have to conduct himself like a wheel-turning monarch. Then the wheel will appear. And how to do it? Have to use the Dhamma as the guide. Using Dhamma to protect all the people, and even including animals. And then those who are in need, give them whatever they need, so that they don't have to steal and kill and all that. And then to seek advice from ascetics and Brahmins who have renounced the life of sensual infatuation. That's a real monk, a real recluse, a real ascetic, is one who has renounced the life of sensual infatuation, and then devoted to forbearance and gentleness, striving for the end of craving. Only those type of ascetics or monks are worthy of being teachers, worthy of being a guide to the king. So then this chaplain told him to listen to such real recluses, ascetics. And, yes, sire, said the king. And he performed the duties of an Aryan wheel-turning monarch. And as he did so, on the fast day of the 15th, that means the full moon day, when he had washed his head and gone up to the veranda on top of his palace for the fast day, the sacred wheel treasure appeared to him, thousand-spoked, complete with fellow hub and all appurtenances. Then the king thought, I have heard that when a duly anointed Katya king sees such a wheel on the fast day of the 15th, he will become a wheel-turning monarch. May I become such a monarch. Then rising from his seat, covering one shoulder with his robe, the king took a gold vessel in his left hand, sprinkled the wheel with his right hand, and said, May the noble wheel treasure turn. May the noble wheel treasure conquer. The wheel turned to the east, and the king followed it with his fourfold army. And in whatever country the wheel stopped, the king took up residence with his fourfold army. And those who opposed him in the eastern region came and said, Come, your majesty, welcome. We are yours, your majesty. Rulers, your majesty. And the king said, Do not take life. Do not take what is not given. Do not commit sexual misconduct. Do not tell lies. Do not drink strong drink. Be moderate in eating. And those who had opposed him in the eastern region became his subjects. Then the wheel turned south, and similarly, the same thing happened in west and north. Then the wheel treasure, having conquered the lands from sea to sea, returned to the royal capital and stopped before the king's palace as he was trying a case, as if to adorn the royal palace. And the second wheel-turning monarch did likewise, and a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and the seventh king also. So this happened, one king after another, for 7 generations. And then the wheel slipped from its position, and 7 days after the royal sage had gone forth, the wheel disappeared. Then a man came to the new king and said, Sire, you should know that the sacred wheel treasure has disappeared. At this the king was grieved and felt sad, but he did not go to the royal sage and ask him about the duties of a wheel-turning monarch. Instead, he ruled the people according to his own ideas, and being so ruled, the people did not prosper as well as they had done under the previous kings who had performed the duties of a wheel-turning monarch. Then the ministers, councillors, treasury officials, guards and keepers and chanters of mantras came to the king and said, "Sire, as long as you rule the people according to your own ideas and differently from the way they were ruled before under previous wheel-turning monarchs, the people do not prosper so well. Sire, there are ministers in your realm, including ourselves, who have preserved the knowledge of how a wheel-turning monarch should rule. Ask us, your majesty, and we will tell you." Then the king ordered all the ministers and others to come together, and he consulted them. And they explained to him the duties of a wheel-turning monarch. And having listened to them, the king established guard and protection. But he did not give property to the needy. And as a result, poverty became rife. With the spread of poverty, a man took what was not given, thus committing what was called theft. They arrested him and brought him before the king, saying, "Your Majesty, this man took what was not given, which we call theft." The king said to him, "Is it true that you took what was not given, which is called theft?" And he said, "It is, your majesty." And the king asked, "Why?" And he answered, "Your majesty, I have nothing to live on." Then the king gave the man some property, saying, "With this, my good man, you can keep yourself, support your mother and father, keep a wife and children, carry on a business, and make gifts to ascetics and Brahmins, which will promote your spiritual welfare and lead to a happy rebirth with pleasant results in the heavenly sphere." And he said, "Very good, your majesty," replied the man. And exactly the same thing happened with another man. Then people heard that the king was giving away property to those who took what was not given, and they thought, "Suppose we were to do likewise." And then another man took what was not given, and they brought him before the king. The king asked him why he had done this, and he replied, "Your majesty, I have nothing to live on." Then the king thought, "If I give property to everybody who takes what is not given, this theft will increase more and more. I had better make an end of him, finish him off once for all, and cut his head off." So he commanded his men, "Bind this man's arms tightly behind him with a strong rope, shave his head closely, and lead him to the rough sound of a drum through the streets and squares and out through the southern gate, and there finish by inflicting the capital penalty and cutting off his head." And they did so. Hearing about this, the people thought, "Now let us get sharp swords made for us, and then we can take from anybody what is not given. And we will make an end of them, finish them off once for all, and cut off their heads." So having procured some sharp swords, they launched murderous assaults on villages, towns, and cities, and went in for highway robbery, killing their victims by cutting off their heads. Thus, from the not giving of property to the needy, poverty became rife. From the growth of poverty, the taking of what was not given increased. From the increase of theft, the use of weapons increased. From the increased use of weapons, the taking of life increased. And from the increase in the taking of life, people's lifespan decreased, their beauty decreased. And as a result of this decrease of lifespan and beauty, the children of those whose lifespan had been 80,000 years lived for only 40,000. Stop here for a moment. So you can see from here how important the ruler or the government of a country is. If the ruler or the government of a country doesn't take care of the people, doesn't ensure that all the people are not poor, then they have to steal because they have nothing to live on. And then if you punish them, then the crime will increase instead of decrease. So if you rule by Dhamma, it's different, fair to everybody. Take care of everybody, even including animals. Then everybody will prosper. And a man of the generation that lived for 40,000 years took what was not given. He was brought before the king, who asked him, "Is it true that you took what was not given, what is called theft?" And he said, "No, your majesty," he replied, thus telling a deliberate lie. Thus from the not giving of property to the needy, the taking of life increased, and from the taking of life, lying increased. From the increase in lying, people's lifespan decreased, their beauty decreased, and as a result, the children of those whose lifespan had been 40,000 years lived for only 20,000. So this man, when he was caught, he thought if he admit that he stole, they will kill him, they will cut off his head. So he started to lie. And a man of the generation that lived for 20,000 years took what was not given. Another man denounced him to the king, saying, Sire, such and such a man has taken what was not given, thus speaking evil of another. Thus from the not giving of property to the needy, the speaking evil of others increased, and in consequence people's lifespan decreased, their beauty decreased, and as a result, the children of those whose lifespan had been 20,000 years lived for only 10,000. And of the generation that lived for 10,000 years, some were beautiful and some were ugly. And those who were ugly, being envious of those who were beautiful, committed adultery with others' wives. Thus from the not giving of property to the needy, sexual misconduct increased, and in consequence people's lifespan decreased, their beauty decreased, and as a result, the children of those whose lifespan had been 10,000 years lived for only 5,000. And among the generation whose lifespan was 5,000 years, two things increased, harsh speech and idle chatter, in consequence of which people's lifespan decreased, their beauty decreased, and as a result, the children of those whose lifespan had been 5,000 years lived some 2,500 years, and some for only 2,000. And among the generation whose lifespan was 2,500 years, covetousness and hatred increased, and in consequence people's lifespan decreased, their beauty decreased, and as a result the children of those whose lifespan had been 2,500 years lived for only 1,000. Among the generation whose lifespan was 1,000 years, false opinions increased, and as a result the children of those whose lifespan had been 1,000 years lived for only 500. And among the generation whose lifespan was 500 years, three things increased, incest, excessive greed and deviant practices, and as a result the children of those whose lifespan had been 500 years lived some for 250 years, some for only 200. And among those whose lifespan was 250 years, these things increased, lack of respect for mother and father, for ascetics and Brahmins, and for the head of the clan. Thus from the not giving of property to the needy, the lack of respect for mother, etc., for ascetics and Brahmins, for the head of the clan increased, and in consequence people's lifespan and beauty decreased. And the children of those whose lifespan had been 2.5 centuries lived for only 100 years. Monks, a time will come when the children of these people will have a lifespan of 10 years, and with them girls will be marriageable at 5 years old, and with them these flavors will disappear, ghee, butter, sesame oil, molasses and salt. Among them kudrusa grain will be the chief food, just as rice and curry are today, and with them the 10 causes of moral conduct will completely disappear, and the 10 causes of evil will prevail exceedingly. For those of a 10-year lifespan, there will be no word for moral, so how can there be anyone who acts in a moral way? Those people who have no respect for mother and father, for ascetics and Brahmins, for the head of the clan, will be the ones who enjoy honor and prestige, just as it is now the people who show respect for mother and father, for ascetics and Brahmins, for the head of the clan, who are praised and honored. So it will be with those who do the opposite. Stop here for a moment. So you see, because of greed and hatred and all these unwholesome states multiply. And when unwholesome states, unwholesome actions increase, then the world changes accordingly, according to karma. The world, and including lifespan of people, keep decreasing down to a minimum of 10 years. The Buddha's teachings, human lifespan can vary from 10 years up to a maximum of 80,000 years. So when it's 10 years old, a lot of the nice things would have disappeared. At that time, people will do the 10 evils. What are the 10 evils? Breaking all the 10 precepts, all the unwholesome actions they do. First one, concerning the body, there are 3. They will kill, they will steal, they will have sexual misconduct. And then 4 are verbal. They will lie, they will carry tales, to cause disharmony. They will speak coarse or vulgar words. They will engage in idle gossip. And then 3, concerning the mind, they have excessive greed. And number 2 is ill will, excessive ill will, allow anger and hatred. And number 3, they have wrong view, don't believe in karma vipaka, don't believe that there are destinations of rebirth, that they are holy men.